Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. When we talk about brand disruption at IAB, we talk about the challenges and opportunities for both digital disruptor brands and established large brands. And there are few brands in the world that are as venerable as Walgreens. I think in my research, 170-year heritage is what we saw, and we're honored to have Pat McLean here, who is the SVP and CMO of Walgreens. I'll talk a little bit about Pat's kind of resume before we get into the details. So Pat was a veteran marketer, having served as CMO of TD Bank, and he was at senior marketing positions at Capital One and Verizon. And I believe, Pat, you started at Walgreens about 6 months before the pandemic hit. So we have something, I think, reasonably in common. I started at IAB right about when the pandemic was coming into the fore. So needless to say, your experience at Walgreens has been reasonably atypical. So it's been a kind of crazy 18 or 19 months. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks very much. And it has been a crazy time. Nothing like starting a new job right before the biggest health crisis in our lifetime.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to dive right into it. I want to start with the recent news that you had at Walgreens, which is your aggressive focus on consumer-centric healthcare, which has been positioned as reimagining retail through expanded health and wellness offerings and mass personalization. And I love that phrase, mass personalization. So could you take us into the boardroom a little bit, and what motivated you to do that? And how does that manifest itself in the real world? What does it mean?
Sure. Thanks, David. It's coming off our experience in the pandemic. It was never clearer to us that we play just an essential and vital role in the communities across the country as a very local destination and a very personal destination for people in terms of managing their health conditions. And obviously, the role that we played through COVID, especially more recently when we've been administering large volumes of vaccine and COVID testing through our destinations in all these communities. I mean, we've really been at the center of helping the country through what's been, obviously one of the biggest health crises we'll hopefully ever see. And so, that insight and the role that we played and what it did for our brand was really re-energize our company around this idea of local and personalized health. And we already had been testing and learning our way into a number of health-related activities. Probably the best example would be our relationship with Village MD, where we're actually co-locating with primary care doctors. And this idea of a single destination where customers could get access to primary care and then also their extended care through the pharmacy and all of our over-the-counter offerings in terms of health and well-being, it really gave us this insight that we've got just this tremendous opportunity. We've got these 9,000 locations across the country. We're already very well known and very trusted as a resource for people when it comes to their health needs. And so what you're seeing is an expansion of our worldview here around the role that Walgreens can play in the lives of people as it pertains to their health. And so we've made some significant investments, where we're putting our money where our mouth is, and we're starting to expand not only the physical way that we're investing in health, but also digitally. So we're also very much investing in technology-enabled health. And so you could imagine a really holistic, omnichannel, local and personal experience with Walgreens that goes well beyond just the interaction that you may have traditionally had with the pharmacist. So it really is a significant pivot strategically for our company. And it's all grounded in a lot of the experience we've had over the last 18 months, helping people through the pandemic.
Awesome. We're going to get back to some of the things that you mentioned there in just a couple of minutes, but I want to just kind of stay on the kind of pandemic and impact for a moment, because obviously you had a critical role in kind of helping us through to get to this point, vaccinations in America and beyond. The pandemic accelerated lots of things. So pandemic accelerated, we say this all the time, it accelerated consumers' usage and habits, accelerated telehealth, it accelerated healthcare, it accelerated kind of the use of digital media for lots of things, entertainment, connectivity, communications, etc. I'm going to quote you poorly, so I'm going to paraphrase if I could, which is that the traditional version of convenience, one could argue that the pandemic has changed the perception of what convenience means, that the traditional version of convenience has shifted. And as retail has evolved over the last few years, Walgreens has had to redefine convenience, which really resonated with me. What does that mean to you and to Walgreens?
Well, that's right, David. The definition of convenience was already changing, and people's expectations of retailers was already very much a combination of experiencing the brand and the offering digitally or in store, and really having a choice of preference of which channel to engage in. And the pandemic has accelerated the change in that definition. I think from Walgreens' perspective, we've always been a really, really strong physical retailer, but we've arguably lagged in terms of investments in digital investments in the combination of a digital experience and a physical experience. And so we very, very quickly, once we knew we were going to be an essential service and in the middle of helping to get through this, we accelerated a lot of the things we were already investing in. So a few examples of that, we launched My Walgreens, which is particularly from a mobile experience perspective, just a complete overhaul of the way people engage with us through the mobile app. It's a single way into all things Walgreens. It comes with a very enhanced loyalty program and enhanced level of engagement with customers through the mobile app. And that enabled people to use the mobile app to initiate and engage with Walgreens without having to actually go into the store for a lot of things that they would have otherwise had to come to the physical location. We launched our pickup service. So, through the mobile app or online, you could order and then come and pick up curbside, or even through our drive-through at our store locations. So people who were hesitant to actually go into the physical location had other options. We also launched delivery in less than 2 hours. We introduced partnerships with DoorDash and others where you could, through those marketplaces, access our services for delivery and in a really, really efficient way. And so all of those things that we launched gave people, meeting their needs in this new definition of convenience. And in the context of the pandemic, especially in the early days of it, when we really had no vaccine and we had no testing, and people were just really, really hesitant to go into the physical stores, these became essential. And so they're now, very significant part of the way people are engaging, and in a lot of ways accelerated the Walgreens changing to meet the ever-evolving needs. But like I said, really accelerated our investment.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And the 2-hour delivery, which a while ago would have been unheard of. I mean, this is like where we're breaking entirely new ground. Does that ever get better than that, or are we kind of maxing out at kind of the speed to I mean, how much more convenient can one get, or is that?
Well, we'll see. I mean, thank you. It really is a great value proposition, and our pickup service is in as little as 30 minutes. So you could be out in the neighborhood doing something else. You could order product on the mobile app, and then as you're doing your everyday routine, you can just drop by a Walgreens and pick up those goods along the way. And so super convenient there. And you're right, 2 hours to deliver. When you think about what's involved in the store and picking out the products and then physically getting it to your home, I mean, it's really built on the strength of our physical network, where with 9,000 stores, we're within 5 miles of 75% of the people living in the country. So it's that's enabling us to be able to deliver on this new definition of convenience.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Let's pivot slightly. There's an expression: if it can't be measured, it shouldn't be done, or it didn't happen, or whatever version of that you'd like. How are you measuring these new kind of products that you're rolling out into the market? How are you measuring success and understanding what works and what doesn't work?
Well, the great thing about the Walgreens measurement capability is I mentioned my Walgreens, and we have over 100 million people in that program. And in that program, they have essentially created an identity with Walgreens. And what we're able to do with that identity is we're able to connect dots between the marketing that we do and the activity that we have to try to engage you in these new services. And then we can actually track back to whether or not that marketing activity that was delivered specifically for you and to you with a personalized approach, whether that actually resulted in you engaging in those services, and whether or not that actually resulted in you purchasing more from us or adding a trip that you wouldn't have otherwise added. And so we can actually close the loop, if you will. And so we know, with a high degree of certainty, when we do something from a marketing and communications perspective, what impact that had on customer engagement, and then what benefit that had back to the business financially. And so it's a really powerful way to, again, personalize that experience and make sure that the value exchange is there, right? So if you think about your own life, when you're interacting with marketing content or communication content, the more relevant it is to you, the more likely you're going to engage with it, and the better the experience is for you. And so customers with Walgreens through My Walgreens are able to get that level of relevancy. And so that's what drives engagement, and that's what's fueling a lot of the growth that you're seeing in our business right now.
Well, I could spend hours actually talking about this one very topic because it is so rich, but I'll just follow up with one quick one, which is I was on the agency side for the majority of my career and had lots of different clients and lots of different categories that were driven by market mix models to determine where spending should go. And market mix models, as you very well know, is based on kind of past performance in order to predict kind of future results. I don't know if I could think of another period of time where what has happened in the past is not necessarily reflective of what happens kind of on a go forward basis. So your ability to put stimulus out in market and read in near real time how that's performing is fantastic. Has it changed your go-to-market strategy where you're spending your dollars in a meaningful way?
It's changed it profoundly. I would say the historical way that we measured marketing performance, we were using some of those tools.
Yeah.
And we continue to use those tools because I do think they're directionally relevant, and they do give you some indication of how you're performing historically, as you say. But we also use all of the sophistication that we have because we can close the loop. So we have matched panels where we can. We do a lot of experimental modeling. The combination of all those tools is what's giving us the intelligence and the confidence to be able to make the shifts that we're making. And I think there's no more profound example of the kind of thing that it's done for us than to mention, just over a year ago, we eliminated the print circular that we used to put in every Sunday paper across the country. We were spending, I won't tell you how much we were spending.
A lot, I'm sure, yes.
And we no longer have that. And so just think about what that means for the way that our media mix and our spend mix has changed, where we're now using much more precise ways of reaching customers through precise media channels. And we've also invested a lot in our CRM capability. We have the Adobe MarTech stack now implemented, so we can do a lot of cross-channel optimization. And so the measurement behind all that gives us a lot of confidence in measurable channels and precise channels. And so we've just shifted profoundly. We've in fact inverted our spend, where before we were spending a lot on those mass channels. And now we're spending, the vast majority of our spend is going to these precision channels, both from a CRM perspective and from a paid media perspective.
Wow, that's really interesting. I know that there's lots of folks in the audience who are listening to this conversation and thinking about the impending changes, things have been changing, but impending changes around privacy and third-party data and kind of all of the what is that going to do to their business? I assume this is almost a rhetorical question, that the kind of primacy of first-party data, you understanding your customer and leveraging that on behalf of what you put in market and on behalf of the products that you sell is really shaping kind of your kind of go forward proposition. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
We're very, very fortunate to have this large investment in first party data. And, I think going forward, this value exchange that I talked about between a customer and the business is going to be of paramount importance, because if you can get consent to interact with customers based on their first party data, I mean, that opens up a wealth of opportunity that, you're right, in this new landscape we're entering, is not going to be available to all. And I'll just give you an example of how that's also changing our business. We launched the Walgreens Advertising Group about a year ago. And the Walgreens Advertising Group is our retail media network, which leverages all this first party data on behalf of other customers. And so CPG companies and other brands are, essentially doing media purchasing through us, leveraging the same capability that we use for ourselves. And so I think you're seeing that across our industry and across places where there are these large first party data opportunities. Is there's lots of ways to monetize it. And that's just another example of how we're doing that.
Yep. I've got two last questions for you because time has been ticking along as I knew it would. One of the most critical challenges that we have in the industry today, bar anyone that I talk to, is around talent. Procuring the right talent, training the right talent, managing it, making sure that we have talent that is diverse and experience set, in race and color, et cetera, et cetera. I imagine as you are reinventing Walgreens, your need for talent, the composition is changing, that the types of folks that you need to hire is changing. How have you gone about that? And is that a challenge for you, or have you kind of cracked the code there?
It's an enormous challenge. And, as a leader, it's one of my top priorities. And it's all the things you said. It's getting the right combination of diversity. It's getting the right combination of people who know Walgreens and know the brand and have relationships within the company, and then also bringing in a mix of people who have other experience and have specific job types that weren't even necessarily contemplated. Data scientists, people who are familiar with a lot of the technology now that marketers need to use to do the kinds of things that I've described. And so, we've been focused on a combination of things. First and foremost, developing and investing in our own people. What I'm very proud to say is that many examples across our organization where people who were in, I would call, more traditional marketing jobs have now developed to the point where they are modern marketers and they do embrace and are able to use all these technologies. And so that's job one, is to make sure the people that you have are able to evolve and develop. And so we've been able to do that. And then we brought in a lot of external talent, and there's been a nice mix of, of people who have been with Walgreens for a while, but also bringing in people. And, location dynamics are changing. People's expectation around virtual work, has changed forever. And so we're wrestling with a lot of those issues right now, as many other companies are, in terms of like, what's going to be our forward-looking philosophy around that, in order to attract diverse, modern, and very capable talent into the organization. So top priority for us, and couldn't have, I spent a lot of my day working on exactly that.
Yeah, I bet. I do too. And I think it's an industry-wide challenge. My last question for you, we're in the kind of critical Q4 time period. You can't put on the news any day without hearing about the supply chain challenges that are kind of vexing the economy. When does that go away? Is that a real problem for a long period of time? Give us your crystal ball, since you're on the front lines of kind of dealing with a lot of the supply chain issues.
It's a huge issue. There's no question about it. And I don't think anyone's really immune to it. I think it's an industry-wide issue, and something as a leadership team we spend a lot of time on. The good news is that despite some of those challenges, we've been able to continue to grow our sales. We've been able to continue to keep largely in stock on most categories. I think if you go in, you'll see, some places where there's spotty supply, but generally speaking, there's always some form of substitute or some form of option that's available to the consumer. So, while it's an issue, I think so far we've been able to largely mitigate it. I should knock on wood. But we're watching closely all of our inventory that's on its way for the holiday season, and beyond. And it's a huge focus for us. So, as an industry, I think we have obviously got to make sure that we're supporting our supplier community as much as we can. But, obviously we've got consumers at the end that have got expectations. And so we've all got to work together to make sure we're delivering on behalf of the customer in the end.
Awesome. We covered a lot of ground, Pat. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate your insights. Best of luck to you as you continue to chart the new path for Walgreens, and hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks for having me on, David. Really appreciate it.